Good morning, everybody. It is Man Coverage. It is September 4th, 2022. This is Knoxville Nate James Bonneville coming to you live, talking some college football. And boy, did we get some college football. James, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm tired. I definitely can tell I'm not in game form. As much football as I've watched over the past 3 days. And we still got more football. We still got a game tonight and a game on Monday night. That's the one thing I love about this holiday is 5 straight days of football. And hopefully by week 2, I'll feel like I'm in game shape there. But yeah, I'm a little tired right now.
Yeah, you look a little rough, but that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
That means you're doing your job and watching the games. Yeah, I love this new format with the Labor Day start and games starting on Thursday. I went to a game on Thursday night and watched the local squad here play against Ball State and got a little taste of college football. And then we had games on Friday night, and we had games on Saturday, and then we got games tonight, and we got games tomorrow. So I can't complain. Any college football is good for me, and having been off of our college football serving for a while, it's good to finally get it back. And it came back, man. We had some great games yesterday, and some games that came down to the wire, and we got to get a look at every team that played so far, and it was pretty interesting. I want to start off talking about the teams and the players that kind of stood out to us. And before we get into, we're going to break down every single game. We're obviously going to get into heavy breakdown of the big matchup in the shoe last night. Pretty happy. Not going to lie to you. Made me happy. I was a little nervous before the game and throughout the game, but we'll get into that pretty heavy. But I want to talk first about kind of who surprised you. Or maybe not who surprised you, but who impressed you the most. James, which team you saw that you watched yesterday kind of stood out to you and came to play in week 1 in a big way?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of them, and I'm trying to say people that are going above expectation, but there were a couple games late that really impressed me. I look at Washington going up against Kent State, and Kent State is a high-powered offense for the MAC. And Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer, I've been a big fan of Kalen DeBoer way back when he used to coach at University of Sioux Falls, NAIA football, where he lost, I think, like 3 or 4 games total during his time there. And he's got that program humming. I mean, for an offense that was like lethargic last year, I mean, you look at the numbers last night that Penix threw up. I mean, they were incredible. He looks like Washington is back in business, and they're going to be playing for a bowl game this year. I mean, here, let me get down to the stats. I just had it up and then somehow clicked it off. 26 of 39 for 345, 4 touchdowns, and he was running like a maniac too. I mean, they looked impressive last night in a 45-20 win. I mean, they kind of took their foot off the gas in the second half, but I was impressed. I was really impressed. Did you get a chance to see them play it all last night?
Yeah. I got to be honest. I was impressed with them because I wasn't really expecting that much.
Exactly. I was expecting that offense to take a little while to develop, and they looked good.
Yeah, no, I was impressed with them. And, I like Penix. I think he brought some magic to Indiana, especially for that 1 year there in 2020. I mean, he was lights out, and they went as far as he could carry him. And, he had that it factor for the Hoosiers. And then injuries kind of derailed his career there where, he had some injuries before that too, which kind of delayed his start. But I like the kid. He's got the confidence, he's got the ability, and kind of just needs the team around him to go with it. So I was impressed, but I've got to admit that the one team that really impressed me and that is kind of my top performer, so to speak, in my mind is the Florida Gators.
Yes.
I didn't give them much of a chance to win this game. I mean, I gave them a chance to win the game because they're playing at home, because they are Florida. They have a lot of talent on that team. But just the way that last year ended, I didn't expect a ton from them, I guess, in week 1 going against a top 7 team in Utah. Don't get me wrong. I think, that Florida still has talent. I like Coach Napier. I think he's going to do a pretty decent job there, but I didn't expect it to all happen so quickly, I guess. And, I was about to say his nickname, but Anthony Richardson, he played yesterday, and he had 274 total yards. He had 3 touchdowns. He did a little bit of it with his legs. He did a little bit of it with his arm. I was really impressed with Florida. Utah had chances to win that game several times, as me and you talked about, but it was like Florida made the plays when they had to, and that really impressed me. What did you think about Florida taking down number 7 Utah?
Honestly, at the end of the day, do I think Utah's the better team? Yes. But you're right, 100%. Florida executed when they need to execute most, and Richardson is living up to the hype. And honestly, I should have put him a lot higher on my looking back on it now, I should have put him a lot higher on my fantasy projections. I thought there was going to still be that malaise and you were going to have a culture problem based off what you saw last year from Mullen. And it looks like they snapped out of it. I mean, heck, the first drive of the game before they fumbled, they were picking more than 10 yards a clip on a Utah defense that is pretty stout, especially in the front 7.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The things fell apart bad last year under Dan Mullen. What the hell happened? I don't think we'll ever really fully know what went down, but it fell apart, and it was evident on the field. And I just couldn't really explain it. They looked pretty decent. What was it, week 2 or week 3 against Alabama? And then the wheels just fell off, and that led to their coach, Dan Mullen, getting fired and losing his job. So I don't know. I guess I just didn't expect them to play as well as they did on both sides of the ball in week 1 against a pretty good opponent. And that, we both picked Utah to win the Pac-12. And, obviously.
And they still can.
They still can.
They still can.
Not a great start for the Pac-12 is what I'm saying.
It's funny. There was a lot of teams yesterday that surprised me. Arizona going into Snapdragon Stadium, opening up San Diego State's new stadium, and really putting a whipping on them. They beat them by 18, and Deloria looks way better at quarterback. There's an identity in Tucson. Heck, Oregon State with Jonathan Smith's doing up there. That program has. I've said for some time that Jonathan Smith is like a hidden gem out there, and somebody's going to snatch him up.
Yeah, I agree. That was pretty impressive. Which player to you kind of stood out? Which guy do you want to give some kudos to as far as, kind of impacted in a big way in week 1? Which guy do you want to talk about?
Strangely enough, there are 2. I'm going to talk about on the defense and special teams side. In possibly one of the ugliest football games I have ever watched in my entire life, it was like watching a train wreck, was the Iowa-South Dakota State game.
Wow.
Jack Campbell is a phenomenal talent. He has increased his stock from last year, and he was already incredibly good. Honestly, I think it's going to be very tough to beat him for the Butkus. When you win 7-3 and 4 of those points come from safeties, that's telling you something. It was an ugly game.
When's the last time that happened?
I know. That's what I was wondering. It was like I was waiting for just a big play to happen to kind of like end the monotony, and it just never happened because Iowa's offense was a train wreck. Tyler Linderbaum it's making me look at even higher at him because Iowa was getting blown off the ball by South Dakota State. When's the last time you've seen Iowa get blown off the ball by anybody?
It's been a while. Usually their offensive and defensive lines are usually pretty solid all the way around. So
exactly.
Pretty amazing. And the fact that they were able to pull out that game is also amazing considering their offense is just
it's non-existent.
It's not.
That punter had 10 punts, 7 of which were inside the 10-yard line. If he's not your offensive MVP for a guy that plays special teams, I don't know what is.
Yeah, when your punter is the MVP, that's not a good thing in any way, shape, or form. But one guy that I did kind of want to give some kudos out to as one of my impact players is a guy that no one's really talking about. And, honestly, I've had questions about him, but he decided to come back. There was questions about him potentially transferring. I'm not really sure what to expect from the season for him so far, but that's DTR, the quarterback from UCLA. He came out. I know they were only playing Bowling Green, but this is a dude who was, a lot of people thought he was going to lose his job and be replaced by Dylan Gabriel or a couple other guys, and he ended up keeping his job and really played well in the first game, putting a beat down to Bowling Green. He was throwing the ball, threw for almost 300 yards. He ran for almost 100 yards. He looked like the, Dorian Thompson-Robinson that we've seen, in the good times. And so I don't know, the Chip Kelly's been there now for what? This is year 5?
I think at least, yeah.
I think it's year 5. And, I really expect him to have turned around UCLA by now, but it's a project. UCLA has not been the same type of program that it used to be back in the 80s and 90s, and whether they'll ever get back, I don't know. But we saw signs of it last year. Me and you talked about the UCLA LSU game where UCLA just dominated LSU at the line of scrimmage. Well, LSU didn't have the type of year that people thought they were, so maybe that game wasn't that big of a deal. But I think Chip Kelly's got to get it done here this year, or people are going to definitely start losing faith in him in Los Angeles and beyond. And if they're going to be moving to the Big Ten, they may be moving another coach in there if he can't get it done. And I thought that, bringing DTR back and having him under center proved to be a pretty good job, at least in game 1, because he looked pretty solid yesterday.
Well, I mean, you look at that game. At one point in the second quarter, Bowling Green was up 17-7, and UCLA has never been a team they're not comeback teams. I mean, you go back to the Josh Rosen victory over Texas A&M where they came back at home. But since then, since Chip Kelly's been there, if they're not winning, they usually turtle up. And they came out and went field goal, touchdown, scored 17 points in the last 8:28 of this first half, and then finished it off. They did not allow Bowling Green to go back in. And heck, when you can go on a 38-0 run, you're going to win games. And Thompson Robinson put that team on his shoulders, and he is out for a mission. They want to get that Pac-12 South title.
I agree. And do they have a shot is my question. Do they have a chance?
They do. I think they do.
I think they do too. I think no one's really, as I mentioned, no one's really been talking about them. No one's talking about him. This guy's a veteran. He's played in a lot of college football games over the years. He's been there during the lows. He's been there during the whatever, I guess you can call them highs, but the highs for them since, Chip Kelly's been back. He's been there for all of it. And, I thought he looked good yesterday. And if they can play like that or similar to that, they've got a chance because the rest of the Pac-12 looked like garbage. And before we get into what happened in the shoe last night, I do want to talk about the games for some of the other top teams really quickly because they weren't really games. And I'm talking obviously about the Pac-12 versus SEC matchup numero uno, Georgia versus Oregon. James, what the hell happened? Is Oregon just that bad? I mean, I know they lost a lot of play. They were a good team last year. They won 10 plus games. Mario Cristobal parlayed it into a ton of money going back to the U. But Dan Lanning, coached a pretty good Georgia defense last year, maybe one of the best defenses of all time. And then he went and took the head coaching job at Oregon and got shellackled by his old team, 49-3. And I thought it was worse than that.
I did too.
What the hell happened? What the hell happened?
Took their foot off the gas. I mean, it was a dumpster fire, and Bo Nix he always had problems against Georgia, but man, did he look bad. I mean, here's an idea, Bo. I mean, granted, I'm not a quarterback expert. I just stayed at a Holiday Inn Express, but I know better than just focusing on your primary receiver. I would maybe, I don't know, do some checkdowns because they were reading your eyes like they were reading a Dick and Jane book. And I mean, it was awful. I mean, he looked horrendous. And he put the defense in bad situation after bad situation, and they got in quicksand and things blew up on him. I mean, heck, they made Stetson Bennett look awesome. You could
Yeah.
just see the confidence in Oregon's face. They looked dejected playing a practical home game in Atlanta for Georgia.
Yeah. We keep saying like, oh, Stetson Bennett. Is Stetson Bennett good? Because I'm starting to believe that he is. I'm thinking maybe all of my analysis of him in the past was wrong. I feel like he's good now. I mean, look at the national championship game. Look at this game last night. This guy is consistent and, may not be the biggest, most athletic guy in the world, but he can run when he has to. He knows where to go with the ball. I feel like he's better than what we give him credit for.
I think you're right. I think the stigma of him being a walk-on is something people just can't get beyond. They hear the word walk-on and they think he sucks. And there are plenty of guys who were walk-ons that became All-Americans. Now,
Baker Mayfield comes to mind.
I mean, remember, I'm not saying that Stetson Bennett is going to become an All-American, that he's better than C.J. Stroud, but he managed a pretty darn good game last night. I mean, it's he doesn't turn the ball over. He does the smart things. Do I see him playing on Sundays? No. But there's plenty of quarterbacks who have won national championships, i.e. Craig Krenzel, who didn't have to freaking, they didn't go out there and have to throw the ball for 400 yards and be the focal point of the offense. The job is don't turn the damn ball over, because if you've got the ball, they can't score. And
right.
he's I mean, granted, I think Georgia's offense is going to have to carry a lot more of the load because I don't see them having the depth but you look at that schedule, Georgia's schedule is not that tough. I mean, probably the two toughest games will be Cocktail Party in Kentucky on the way out.
Yeah. I don't know. Kentucky didn't look that great either. Struggling against Miami of Ohio yesterday, but Stetson Bennett, we say, he doesn't have to throw for 400 yards. Well, he almost did throw for 400 yards yesterday. I mean, that was a pretty amazing game. 25 of 31, 368, averaged almost 12 yards of completion, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He ran the ball for a touchdown when he had a 7-yard touchdown run. He spread the ball out. I mean, there was, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different receivers caught passes. I just got to admit that I'm starting to think that maybe I was wrong about him. He can get it done, and he's proving that he can get it done against some of the better teams. Oregon, I don't think, is a good team. I said it from the beginning. They're going to go as far as whoever plays quarterback goes. I didn't think Bo Nix was a good fit there. I don't like Bo Nix anywhere. As a lot of people said on Twitter last night, Bo Nix is back just like he never left because he looked pretty much the same as he did in a lot of the ugly Auburn games last year. And, I think moving on from him is a good thing for Auburn because he looked like garbage in a new uniform last night. And, wow. I expected Georgia to win. Honestly, I
did too.
I expected them to win by 2 touchdowns, but I didn't expect a 49-3 bloodletting, which is what we saw.
No, I agree.
But anyway, so Georgia's not. Everyone thought this is going to be a rebuild year for Georgia, or maybe not a rebuild year, but they lost so many guys. Surely they can't be as good. We'll find out soon enough, but they looked pretty good in the opener. Same thing with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Another year, another Nick Saban team, looking just about the same. They looked sharp. I mean,
they execute, but when do they not execute? I mean,
it's getting so monotonous.
Yeah.
I mean, this quarterback threw for 5 touchdowns. I think he ran for 1 too. Didn't play much in the second half. 18 of 28, 195 yards, 5 TDs. He also ran for 100 yards. I don't know, man. I mean, this 55-0 against Utah State, who already had a win. Did you get to see Bama at all? And what did you think about them in the first
A
game
little
for them?
bit, but it was as predicted. It's Bama being Bama. I mean, granted, Utah State has not looked good. I mean, remember they hung on and had to pull away from UConn last week at home.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
granted, it's early in the year. Everybody's knocking the rust off, but Bama is going to be Bama. Let's be honest. Was there a question mark that they wouldn't be in the playoff? I mean, the only way I think they could have problems is if Bryce Young gets hurt. That's it. If Bryce Young gets hurt, then we have to have another conversation. But until then, I mean, you got to put Bama in the conversation. They'll be playing in the Final Four.
Yeah, I agree. And, yesterday Utah State used 3 quarterbacks. The 3 quarterbacks combined were 8 of 22 for 57 yards. I think this defense is going to be better this year. Last year at times the defense didn't look like a Alabama defense does most of the time, but they looked like it yesterday. And they've got Dallas Turner and they've got Will Anderson Jr. Jordan Battle is back. Malachi Moore is back. They've still got Henry To'oTo'o. So, they've got the stars there and they've got the young guys. This defense looked amazing yesterday. And I know it's Utah State, but they look like they are back to where they were a couple of years ago. So it's going to be another year of watching Nick Saban dominate college football. What the hell else is new?
Well, I mean, the sun rises east and sets in the west until he retires. Bama's going to be Bama. I mean, let's be honest.
It's just ridiculous and almost unbelievable how he can continue to do this over and over again. I mean, I know everybody talks about it, but I don't even think they talk about it enough because the dynasty, the dominance is just, it's never ending. And you would think at some point, 1 year, 1 game at one time, the team would have a letdown or the team wouldn't be as good 1 year as it was the year before. But with the way he recruits and the way he coaches, the way he develops, it just is, it's nonstop. And it's pretty freaking amazing. We're going to be having Mr. Quarterback Bellisari joining us here in just a moment. But why don't we go ahead and talk about our initial thoughts of the game last night. As I mentioned before, I was a little bit nervous before the game. I don't understand. This is something that me and you talked about and that I want to talk about for a moment. Why, if a team is ranked number 5 in the preseason and, is supposed to be a top 5 team and is playing a number 2 team, you got a top 5 matchup. Why is the spread 17.5? I never understood that. I didn't think that this game was going to be a 20-point blowout, and certainly not when Jackson Smith and Jigba got hurt on the 3rd play of the game when the Buckeyes were on offense. But, I thought that this was a really, good game. I felt like if you give, a defensive-minded coach like Marcus Freeman months to prepare for a team, that he's going to come up with a plan, and he did. And, it worked. It worked for 3 quarters, but, eventually the Buckeyes offensive line started to wear, I think, the defensive line out for Notre Dame a little bit, started to run the ball on them a little bit more. I'm not sure why they didn't run the ball more throughout the game, but, whatever. This game was close, and it was closer than the score indicated, and I felt like it was going to be a close game. Why, James, tell me your opinion. Why was the spread 17.5 when you had 2 top 5 teams?
Well, rule 1, somebody's got to be ranked 4, 5, 6, 7. It's not like you could rank them 1, 2, 3, and then next one up is 21. So, I mean, someone's got to be in that spot. Now, do I think there is a cliff from 3 to 4 to 5? Yes, I think there's a huge cliff. And the top 3 teams are the 3 teams everybody's been talking about making the playoff. And I think from a talent perspective, when you look at that on paper, Ohio State's got more talent. Now, do I think that Marcus Freeman did a phenomenal job last night preparing for that game? Absolutely. I mean, how many times you hear people say they drop 8? All the time, when they're going up against passing teams. There were times last night where Notre Dame dropped 9 and 10. I mean, they were going to take that away, especially when Jackson Smith and Jigba, because one of the big downsides people have been talking about Ryan Day for some time is that he does throw the ball too much.
Yep.
And he made this big plea about how he was going to show his will and play Big Ten football. I mean, he did have 35 carries last night for 172 yards. But it really didn't look truly impressive until you, like you said, in that fourth quarter. And Mayan Williams, I think, is a real hidden gem in that Ohio State system. I mean, Travion Henderson is unbelievably fast, but Williams gets you those ugly yards, and he helped that team down the stretch to ice it overall. But heck, look at that defense. I mean, look at the defense when you saw them play Minnesota at the opening game last year versus yesterday. Last year, it was a lot of base stuff where their linebackers were not hitting gaps, and Mo Ibrahim was having a field day. Today, I mean, heck, Notre Dame is known for the running, and they went 30 for 76 for 2.5 a carry. When Notre Dame goes 2.5 a carry, they lose.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And it was a completely different defense. I mean, let's talk about, the second half. Ohio State gave up 72 total yards. And this is when, Notre Dame started to mix up their play calling a little bit. They were doing everything they could to try and get points, to try and get down the field. They really opened it up. And, let's be honest, Buckner looked pretty good considering that was his first ever start. He began the game 8 of 8. I thought that play call on the first play was amazing. It just worked out perfectly for them. They got a 54-yard gain because, Knowles had a corner blitz called, and they had a quick, out pass to the receiver that the corner was blitzing on. So it worked out phenomenally. And, I was really impressed by what the, kid did in his first ever start for Notre Dame on a big stage in the Horseshoe with 100,000 people yelling against him. I was very impressed with that. But at the same time, you've got to give Jim Knowles credit. I mean, this was a completely different defense than what we saw yesterday. They were mixing up coverages. They were mixing up fronts. You really didn't know what they were doing. Until the play was run, you didn't know what this defense was going to do. You didn't know what kind of coverage they were in. You didn't know who was coming, if they were blitzing. I just thought it was night and day between what Coach Kerry Coombs was putting together last year and what was put together this year. I couldn't have been happier with the way that the defense played. The linebacker group, as we'll talk to Steve here in a minute about, it's been a real sore spot of this team. And I thought it was a strength yesterday. Steel Chambers, Cody Simon, Eichenberg, I thought played out of his mind. It was just a complete night and day difference.
Well, not only that, Hall was getting penetration off the defensive line too, as well. I thought he played one hell of a game.
Oh, Hall, Michael Hall was the best player on the field, in my opinion. Last night from start to finish.
I mean, but the one thing I was questioning on for this defense was, remember that Knowles was at Oklahoma State for 4 years, and those early years, the defenses were not that great. And it took time for them to develop and understand what he wanted to do. And look at what they were last year. I mean, they were for a Big 12, they were rock solid.
Yeah.
For a league that likes to throw up points like it's a video game.
Yeah, there's no doubt. All right, hang on 1 sec. I'm going to bring somebody else into this conversation here.
Absolutely.
Let's see what we got to say.
Hey.
Hey, Steve, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. How about you?
We're doing real good. We are just diving into this game last night. I've got an opening question for you. You're coming out. You're the quarterback of the Buckeyes. You've got a huge game. Everybody's watching. Top 5 matchup, and your best, most talented, the best wide receiver in the country goes down with an injury. On his first catch. What the hell do you do after that? I mean, you've already got enough pressure on you. Just talk to us a little bit about, CJ Stroud last night. I mean, it wasn't his best game, obviously, but, there's a lot of young, new players out there for the team. Just tell us, give us your thoughts on, what kind of pressure he was dealing with and what you thought of the game from him last night.
Yeah, I mean, obviously coming off of the season he had and then coming into a marquee game like that, you're going to feel a lot of pressure. But I think he did well. I mean, here's the reality. Notre Dame's a good football team, right?
Yeah.
You saw the Marcus Freeman and their defense one, wasn't a surprise. I mean, he's been doing that throughout his whole career. And hey, they knew the recipe that they had to do to win, and it wasn't going to be through the air, right? Marcus made it really clear in the beginning. Like, think about it. We didn't have a couple pass plays over 20, 30 yards, right? And that's not normal for us. We didn't attack the ball downfield because we couldn't, right? They were coached up and did a really good job. So, if you take a step back and look at the film and realize what we did, I thought we had a really good game plan and, adjusted with the injury, right? You saw people step up in the receiving group that they should have. And, our top two running backs averaged 6 yards a carry. So all in, I think it's a pretty good offensive game, up against a really good defense.
I agree.
Do you start to think that you're going to see Big Ten teams are going to basically look at that Notre Dame game as their boilerplate of how they're going to defend Ohio State moving forward? And then what does Ryan Day do in the meantime? Does he just rely more on that running game and try to get 35, 40 carries a game?
Yeah, I mean, I think both of those will work, right? But the reality is over the season, you'll have injuries and people evolve. And let's be clear, the corners and the DBs that we're going to face aren't going to match up the same way that Notre Dame did, right? They had two really physical guys out there that could run with Marvin Harrison and, the likes of Smith and Jigba. So the boilerplate's really good because Freeman can coach it and knows it really well. Whether you have the personnel to run it is the next question, right? So I don't see how teams can match up going into the season like that against us, just because I don't think they have the personnel. But I mean, it's a good plan. But if we can run the ball 35 times a game and still average 6 carries, who's going to beat us?
Yeah. So, I mean, heck, you're getting back to old school Cooper and why am I drawing a mind fart? Right? Yes, Trustable. Yes.
Yeah. No, and that's I was saying this at the beginning of the game was they were playing that type of coverage early, and they were really trying to take away any of the deep stuff, keep everybody in front of them. And I felt like they should have ran the ball more at the beginning of the game. I'm not criticizing Ryan Day. He's a very good play caller. He's an unbelievable coach. He knows more about football than I will ever know. But I just feel like, I don't know, I felt like they went away from the run a little bit and tried to force the pass maybe too much. Am I nuts thinking that?
Well, I mean, I think they had a game plan to get the ball out there, right? And then when your top receiver gets hurt, you're trying to adjust and put different people in. So, I mean, they were not making it up as they went, but they had to adjust, right? Because of that big hole in their offense. But the reality is you want to get a guy like CJ Stroud momentum. I think they did that. We really didn't take any shots down the field because I don't think we had to, and it wasn't going to be there. So, I have a feeling our offense is going to be just fine. Coming out of that game, that was the least of my worries, right? I mean, our biggest question was how were we going to show up on defense? We had some dumb penalties that honestly made the game a lot closer than I think it should have been. Yeah. But, I mean, Notre Dame's a good football team, and we went out and played well. So,
yeah. I mean, sitting there saying, I mean, it looks, we just talked about this before you came on, of how there is a night and day difference between what Kerry Coombs did last year in that opening game against Minnesota and what you saw last night from Jim Knowles, where everything was so base and the linebackers were out, were never hitting their gap, to yesterday was, pick your blitz. And you'd line up a certain way, and the quarterback, Buckner, didn't know heads or tails where anything was coming from. I mean, I, from your perspective, how do you prepare for something like that? I mean,
you're going to get a lot of different looks. I mean, if you look at the stat line, in the passing game for Notre Dame, they had 5 catches over 25 yards.
Yeah.
They didn't really do anything to pick us apart. Now they had some big plays, which on the back end, you want to make sure you're getting covered, but that's what's going to happen when you see those type of zone blitzes. You're going to see people either miss some tackles or break some plays like that. And we got to be able to recover, which we did. But if we can continue to get pressure with 4 without having to do some of those zone blitzes, that's when we get really dangerous, because then we're able to put people in coverage and, really mix it up, which I think we're going to get there. I mean, the linebacker play was the best I've seen in a while, right? You had guys coming downhill and they're good run fits. If you notice something, our tackling was way better last night than it's been an opening game.
Oh, infinitely better.
Guys were coming downhill, and we saw running backs going backwards versus falling forward all the time, which that's a good indication of where we're going to go.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the linebacker play. Me and James were talking about that just right before you joined us. I mean, I thought Steele played good. I thought that Eichenberg played out of his mind. I thought that Simon even played well. And I thought that the linebacker position was a strength for us last night as opposed to a weakness, which it has been in the past. I mean, all in all, Notre Dame had 30 carries for 76 yards rushing. I mean, I think that's pretty damn good. And to be honest, we were just saying that Michael Hall was the best player that we saw, consistently throughout that game. That guy was a monster. But, I still didn't see the type of pressure that I think it's going to take for this Ohio State team to win the national championship. I think they're going to have somebody break out. I don't know whether it's JT Talamua. I don't know whether it's Jack Sawyer. I don't know whether Harrison finally does it. Somebody's going to have to get home and start getting to the quarterback. Talk to me a little bit about what you saw out of those three guys and what you see from them going forward.
Yeah, so you notice a lot of their big plays were on, early rundowns with some of our zone blitzes from a run perspective, and that's why they got those big passes. But we were 3 for 13 on third down. Like, we got off the field on third down, which in years past that wasn't the case. So look at how we were getting pressure. Could we always want to see more? Yeah, but I mean, I look at what 51 did and how they played yesterday on third down. That's a good indication of where we're trying to go. So I think it's more of a scheme thing than anything. And, we were in a position to drop and get zone coverage on a freshman quarterback. Let's try to drop many people and confuse them versus trying to blitz them and let them get away with a big play. So I think our scheme worked really well against that guy, and we'll see what happens in the future. But our front seven looked really good yesterday.
Yeah, I agree.
What other games did you watch this weekend, and what impressed you and depressed you the most?
Yeah, I mean, I had a chance to watch Minnesota play on Thursday night. I think, with Ibrahim back, he's a good running back. They're going to be good on the west side of that conference. Penn State Purdue was a hell of a football game. I think it's going to be, obviously they got a good quarterback that made some big plays down the stretch there. And anytime Penn State's good, it's good for the conference. So we've seen a lot of really good things. Most impressive was what Georgia did to Oregon.
Oh,
I mean, I forget how many yards rushing they had, but that was a pretty physical, dominating game. And Oregon's a good football team, right? I know first coach and all that stuff, but Georgia looked really good. So it'll be fun to watch the rest of the year. I know that much.
Yeah, no, it was a pretty cool. We were just talking about how we love this opening weekend. You got games starting Thursday night, you got Friday, you got Saturday, you got Sunday, you got Monday. I mean, for a crazy person like us, it's pretty cool. And I thought last night, I thought the game really delivered. I mean, I thought Notre Dame came in with a great plan. I thought they executed well. Obviously Ohio State has more talent overall, but the game was close, and I thought it would be close. I thought that 17.5-point spread was honestly a little bit ridiculous when you're calling Notre Dame a top 5 team. What did you think of the game, before it happened, seeing that 17.5-point number on it?
Yeah, well, those guys in Vegas are good at setting odds for a reason. They knew that the Ohio State faithful was going to take that bet. Notre Dame's a good football team, right?
Yeah.
17.5, like, I never thought that was even possible. The game went about exactly as I expected, right? It was physical, right? They were going to challenge us. We had to come up to play, and we did. And that showed up in the stat line, but we still won pretty handily, right? We looked good. We closed it out when we had to. Second half, we had to run the ball. We established that, and we played really good defense, right? We didn't give up any points in the second half. So I don't know what else we could have done differently. That's how that game was supposed to live up to it, and I didn't see that being a track meet at all, especially with Coach Freeman and his background on defense.
Yeah, it's amazing how – now, you played with Marcus in college, right? Or is he –
He just a little bit after me, but I know him very well.
They kept talking about how cerebral he was during the pregame. Like, what was he like back when he was in college ball? Well, like, that made you have that spark that, maybe he could coach, or he had that leadership qualities that you saw?
Yeah, I mean, you notice what I'm seeing out of him now as a head coach is what you saw in him as a player, right? He approached it the same way. He knew they were going to put in the work, and after that, they were going to let everything, leave it out on the field. That's how Marcus is, right? He's watching the game. He's making adjustments. Go look at his whole coaching career, and I think he learned that when he was playing at Ohio State, right? They're going to come out, and they're going to have a scheme, and they're going to do well, but what do you adjust, and how do you keep pressure on? And that's what Marcus does really well, right? Think about it. They did a good job getting pressure on us last night.
Yeah.
They're doing some schemes to make it challenging. They took away our number one receiver, right? And knocked him out. So, I mean, they did a really good job on defense, but we still established 6 yards of carry on the rush, which if we continue to do that, we're going to win a lot of football games.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. It should be nice to see what happens moving forward. Honestly, the receiving core I thought played pretty well. I mean, they're getting some heat, but honestly, I thought they stepped up pretty good. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. had 5 catches for 56 yards. No one's really giving him credit for that, but he did. And Ibuka really stepped up and had 9 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown, considering he became kind of the number one guy after Jackson Smith and Jigba, went out. Talk to me, Steve, just a little bit about, moving forward the rest of the season. What do you expect based on the schedule from this team? And what are your thoughts about, the offense moving forward, and what will they look like, against the opponents coming up?
Well, if you think about it, if Harrison Jr. completes that catch on that one long touchdown pass, right, he just dropped it, right? Everyone has a totally different story on the stat line from a passing perspective. So just file that away and keep that in. I mean, teams are going to have to pick how they want us to beat them. Are you going to give up the pass and put people in the box, or are you going to do what Notre Dame did, right? They tried to stay in zone, tried to get away, cover our receivers, which allowed us to get 6 yards of carry. You're going to have to pick one or the other. And if both of our running backs are running like that, what do you do, right? So the sky's the limit with this offense and where we want to go. The question I would have for our fans as you look at the season, do you want to win a national championship or get C.J. Stroud the Heisman Trophy? I'd rather win a national championship and win games the way we did last night in a solid fashion, just because he only had 250 yards passing. Still had a great stat line and a good game, right? So we keep winning games like that, we're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, he had no picks too. I mean, he didn't hang on to the ball too long and get popped and fumble it. He didn't have an interception. I mean, that to me was what really stood out. Was he didn't make any huge mistakes. I mean, it wasn't perfect. It was game one. He had a lot of pressure on him coming in. His best receiver went out, but he just kept on plugging. And so I like that. Last question for me, Steve, was I got to admit I was impressed with this Buckner kid who never started a game in his Notre Dame career, coming into the shoe and starting out 8 for 8. Just tell me what you thought about him coming out in his first start and what you think it was like for him playing in the horseshoe for his first start ever in the season opener.
I mean, I'm sure he'll try to downplay it, but that's pretty impressive what he did. He came out and he played really well. I think, his big guy, his big tight end made a couple really big plays for him. Yeah. But the reality is from a blitz recognition and just putting himself in a position to make those plays, he did a really good job. And that's probably the part to me that was the most impressive. I mean, we threw a lot of different early looks at him that he handled pretty well. Hence the first play of the game, right? We came out with a nice run blitz. He threw right into the teeth of it, made a big play. So if that's what they're going to get from him for the rest of the year, Notre Dame's they're a top 10 football team, easy, top 5, right? I mean, they're going to win a lot of football. So
one last question for me is always going into the first game of the year. I mean, you've had 250 some odd days of playing, working out with your guys, practicing. You haven't faced anybody. It's not like the NFL where there's preseason games. We get that or scrimmages against somebody else. Mm-hmm. What's your headspace as a quarterback going in, even if you're playing Notre Dame or at home against Toledo? Like, what's going through your head in those days and weeks coming up to that first game when you're coming through the tunnel out into the field? Like, is it butterflies? Is it like, what are you going through to prepare yourself for that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always butterflies. Those guys, we don't want to admit it, right? We're superhuman, but the reality is, you want to go out and you want to execute, and especially coming after a year, right? Think about it. Last year, C.J. Stroud put out a hell of a year. Now he's going out putting on his own pressure on top of everything else. But the reality is you want to establish identity and be efficient. And if you look at what we did last night, I mean, they were efficient with the football, right? We had no turnover, to your point. We did pretty well on third downs, right? We got a good chunk of first downs. We ran the ball well. And, when we had to throw the ball, we did, right? We didn't take any big shots. We didn't do anything to really out-scheme them. We knew we had to play a solid, efficient game, and we did that. And that's what you want to see out of your quarterback, a veteran quarterback coming out and managing the game. And he did that really well.
Awesome. Steve, man, thank you so much for coming on with us today. I loved your breakdown as always, and loved hearing your thoughts as it was pretty great season opener. I mean, they top 5 teams I expected a good game, and that's what we got. So hopefully the season, like you said, will look like this going forward, and that defense will just keep getting better as we go along. So hopefully we can bring you back and have you on later on the year after a couple more games if you got time, buddy.
Would love to, man. Appreciate it.
Happy birthday to your little guy too, as well. It was last week, right?
Yeah, last week turned 11. So
nice.
Oh yeah, we're knee deep in football, so it's a lot of fun right now.
Nice,
awesome, man. Enjoy it and stay in touch with us. We'll have you on whenever you got time. Okay, bud.
You got it, man. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Steve. Have a good one, buddy.
Bye.
Man, that was awesome. Always love hearing from a guy who did it and started at quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I love Steve's takes. He always breaks it down and shoots it straight.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you saw this stat line here below, but since 1998, Notre Dame is now 3-22 versus top 5 teams.
You could say since Lou Holtz and just make it more specific,
Hey, I'm just repeating the stat line. I mean, it's a fact. I mean, they don't necessarily play great against top 5 competition. People want to say it's because that they don't have the same type of talent, that they just aren't as good. I don't really know the answer as to why that record is what it is, but the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, what games are you looking forward to next week?
I don't know. I haven't really looked into those yet, but we do have a question here for you, James. What do you think went wrong in the first half? I'm going to give my quick answer, and then I'll let you answer that, James. Question from Adam White from Columbus. My thing is, I don't think anything really went particularly wrong. I think Notre Dame did a good job. They had a great game plan. I think if I can say one thing that went wrong was Jackson Smith and Jigba getting hurt. I mean, you can say it's just one guy, but the dude is the best wide receiver in the country for a reason.
Yeah.
And losing him, as well as losing your 2 best wide receivers from last year in Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, losing basically all 3 of those guys right away, was an eye-opening experience and caused the game plan to have to shift. So that's kind of what I think happened. But I also think that the defense came to play and the scheme was good. What did you think, James?
Well, I mean, Notre Dame's whole game plan was to keep everything in front of them. I mean, they were not going to get beat one bit. And honestly, I think people have got to, they're so used to last year Ohio State throwing up 40 points and playing video game football. And quite frankly, a 21-10 win is just as good as a 31-20 win. I mean, just because you have more offense doesn't mean better football. And quite frankly, it's the first game of the year. Let them knock off some rust and see what happens. There's a lot of football yet to be played. And trust me, there are teams. You look back at the 2014 Buckeyes. I mean, remember, they lost to Virginia Tech at home and still went on to win the national title that year. Yep. So just because things happen early doesn't mean you want to get hot late. You don't want to get hot now and then lose steam.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, I think, honestly, it was just these are 2 good teams. And,
yeah,
they were taking away the deep stuff. And so that's why the stats looked the way they did. That's why the first half looked the way it did, was because that's how, they wanted it to look. They didn't want to. They were going to let us take the underneath stuff, and they were going to try and take away all the deep stuff. So that's kind of what went down. But just digging into some of these other games really quick, I wanted to hit on, before we get out of here, because we're running out of time, I wanted to talk a little bit about the NC State game. I watched the NC State East Carolina game from start to finish, and I have to be honest, East Carolina looked like the better team. And I'm not saying that NC State sucks. I'm not saying that they're not good. But they got pushed around a little bit by East Carolina, and East Carolina owned that second half. If that guy doesn't miss the extra point, A, the game's tied and it goes to overtime. And B, if he doesn't miss the, I don't know exactly what it was. I think it was like 38-yard field goal, maybe 40 at the most. But he missed an extra point and then missed a makeable field goal that he still had to win the game. Is NC State bad, or what happened, do you think, in that game yesterday where they definitely should have lost?
Well, I mean, East Carolina is a solid program. I mean, I think that people are really discounting them because East Carolina has been down for quite some time since Ruffin McNeil, and heck, people forget it. Lincoln Riley was the OC there back when Ruffin McNeil was the coach.
Yeah.
Mike Houston's been building this program up, and I mean, a name to keep on people's lips is Holton Eilers, the quarterback. I mean, there's a reason why you see the guys like Phil Steele talking him up, the NFL draft guys. I mean, this is a guy that could have gone to many other programs and chose to stay home. He went to D.H. Conley High School in Greenville. He stayed home to play for East Carolina. And you got to take your hat off to a guy like that who's willing to help rebuild that program. I mean, heck, this is a guy who had offers from Florida, from Georgia, from Indiana, from Minnesota, NC State, Oregon State. I mean, the list goes on and on, but he stayed home and they really built that program well. I mean, NC State's going to be a quality team. That defense is rock solid. And as usual, Doran's got a strong offensive line and Devin Leary's good. Yeah. But I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, the little things matter. And that missed extra point was the difference between playing for a little bit more time and seeing if you could pull it off at home in an electric crowd. The Boneyard was electric yesterday.
It was electric, and I like Coach Houston. I mean, that guy, we talked about him off air yesterday. He won a national championship at James Madison. He played for a second one. So this is a guy that was basically a multiple national championship type guy in the lower levels, and looked like he knew what the hell he was doing yesterday. He had a hell of a game plan and really, really played well for the East Carolina Pirates. So I'm going to give them credit. The other game that I wanted to talk to you about was the Arkansas-Cincinnati game. It's a game that I thought would be pretty good. Two ranked teams, number 19 Arkansas versus number 23 Cincinnati. Obviously, Cincinnati lost a lot. They lost their quarterback. They lost their running back. They lost at least one, maybe two of their good receivers. They lost a lot on defense. But, still Coach Fickell is there. He brought in a quarterback who's been in his system for quite some time. I thought Cincinnati played really good in the second half. They scored all 24 points in the second half. But KJ Jefferson, guy we weren't sure about, he looked really good. He 18 of 26, 223 yards, 3 touchdown passes, and then he ran for a touchdown as well and had 62 yards on the ground. What did you think about Arkansas, Cincinnati, and what is your take on those two teams after week one?
Arkansas, KJ Jefferson, I was worried that when they lost Traylon Burks, they were going to see a downgrade, but I think he's really matured in this game. I mean, people forget how big this guy truly is. He's 6'3", 240 pounds, and he's got speed. So you're really looking a guy like Tim Tebow style of running back. I mean, a quarterback. He can run, he can throw. I still am wondering, I mean, you lost a lot on that. Cincinnati lost a lot in their D-backs, and not having that strength at corner, which they had last time, I think has hurt them because Arkansas didn't have that lights out receiver. I mean, they were hoping Jaden Hazelwood, the transfer from Oklahoma, would step it up. He only had 3 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown yesterday. My worry is KJ Jefferson's going to have to put too much on his back, and at some point that could hurt this team.
Yeah, I thought that other kid, Trey Knox, looked really good. He looked fast. He caught the ball well, number 7. I think he had 6 catches for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. So with maybe him with Hazelwood combined, they can kind of pick up the slack, lost from Burks moving on. But, this was a good win for them at home against a quality opponent, I felt like, and they got them – got their best shot in the second half. So, I've talked to you about this at length. I like Coach Pittman. I talked to, say whatever you want to about the guy. Since he's gotten, been there in Arkansas, this has been a different team. I mean, this team was no good, struggled mightily to even win game. I mean, they were winless in the SEC the year before he got there. And he stepped in and just instilled his culture. And it's really, taken hold. And it looks like a different program since he's been at the helm. So I love that. talk to me about the other games you want to talk about before we get out of here.
I'm blown away when you brought up North Carolina that you didn't bring up a game in far western North Carolina in the city of Boone between North Carolina and App State. App State scored 40 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, that was like literally playing Tecmo Bowl of the 90s at the end. How much points were put on the board? Did you end up watching the end of that where a 2-point conversion was the difference between taking that game to overtime at 63-63 and then they didn't make it?
Yeah, they had a couple failed 2-point conversions at the end there, or App State could have easily won that game. I'm not sure whether that game is more of an indictment on App State or UNC. I really think I think it may be UNC, to be honest. I'm not sold on them. They really underperformed last year, and honestly, I felt like, if they were going to do anything, it was probably last year with Sam Howell at quarterback, who'd been there for years and was projected to lead them to a potential ACC title, and things just never really materialized. And I feel like this team may be going the wrong direction. They definitely got lucky in that one, but the other games that intrigued you were what?
The Minnesota game. I think Minnesota being New Mexico State, you saw Mo Ibrahim getting back to being old school Mo Ibrahim. I questioned after his torn Achilles what he'd be like, but that defense, as much as they lost, looked lights out. There's no stars on that defense, but man, they know how to keep everything in front of them and they attack the ball. One thing going back to that App State game, Chase Bryce, the guy who's been on the Christian Laettner graduation plan. I mean, he's got to be like a doctor now since he's been in college for like 20 years. Yeah. Had 361 yards passing, 6 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception. When's this guy going to actually get a job and leave? And because it seems like he's played for Clemson, Duke, App State. Is VMI in his future? Is James Madison? I mean, the guy's been around for freaking ever.
How many teams has he played for now?
At least 3: Clemson, Duke, and now App State.
Yeah, I don't know, man, but he brought the pain yesterday and proved that he's learned something at all those stops. But yeah, we got another question here talking about the first games. Top teams were playing unranked teams. Ohio State playing number 5 team. Yeah, we've talked about that at length. You have teams like the team up north who opened against Colorado State, is coming back with Hawaii and then UConn to start their season. And meanwhile, Ohio State opened up against Notre Dame. Honestly, I think it's good to go ahead and play somebody good. I think it was good for the Buckeyes really to get challenged like that in the first week. And these other teams, you got to realize in the NFL, you got a preseason where you play 3 games that don't count. And you can just basically, see what guys are made of, figure out who's good, who's not good, who's going to be the best in that particular position to help your team. But in college football, you don't have that. And so some of these teams like to, throw a tune-up game, if you were, out there, first and foremost. But I get it. There were some of those, but there's actually, for a week 1 lineup, there's been some good games. Purdue, Penn State, for example, West Virginia, Pittsburgh, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Georgia, Oregon, supposed to be good. Wasn't, but was supposed to be a good matchup. There are some decent matchups. So, a lot of these teams got a warm-up game, but some did not. And I on that point, I want to talk to you about the Penn State Purdue game. I know we talked to Steve Bellisari about it there for a minute, but I don't know. I'm still not seeing what I want to see, I guess, out of Sean Clifford. I for 3 quarters, I thought he looked pretty pedestrian, honestly. And I thought they kind of got helped out, I wanted to say, to win that game. The play calling was suspect in the end of the game for Purdue and Jeff Brom. There were some mistakes made by the Purdue Boilermakers. Otherwise, I felt like they could have won that game. What do you think? You think just because they won, Penn State's going to use it as a positive and move forward? Or what did you take away from that Purdue-Penn State matchup?
sometimes you're going to win ugly. I mean, let's be honest. You're going to win ugly. And it's not like, I mean, Sean Clifford is Sean Clifford. It's not like he's going to wake up one day and become Dan Marino.
Yeah.
You know, he has to, he's never going to be that kind of guy that's just going to have that huge power arm. I mean, I think one thing Penn State's got to get a better job of is running the football. I mean, once again, they only had their leading rusher only had 31 yards on the ground.
Yeah. And
they're going to have to throw the ball and rely on that defense. And Purdue is not a bad program. I mean, Aiden O'Connell is legit. I mean, 29 to 58 for 356. I mean, if you've watched any Purdue football over, I don't know, the last 2.5 decades, you know they're going to throw the ball. It's the cradle of quarterbacks. The guy that really impressed me in that game was the Iowa transfer, Charlie Jones. He had only 21 catches last year in Iowa City. In one game, he had 12 catches for 153 yards and a touchdown. He really has shown his development as a kid who's transferred twice now and now playing in West Lafayette.
Yeah, I agree. And it'll be interesting to see what the Big Ten looks like moving forward. As me and you talked about, I did pick Minnesota to finish a little higher than you did. I think they looked good week one. That doesn't mean that's how it's going to end up. But I was impressed with them week one. And, we'll see what happens moving forward. However, we've still got games this week.
Yeah.
We got the Clemson Tigers tonight. Clemson is playing Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech not good, but
that's tomorrow night. Tonight's LSU and Florida State.
You're right. Today is Sunday. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, tonight is Sunday, September 4th, and is Florida State LSU, and then tomorrow is Clemson and Georgia Tech. So the Clemson game tomorrow, I'm looking forward to see what the Clemson offense looks like. I want to see. I know it's not a great team they're playing, but I want to see what the quarterback looks like. I want to see what the offensive line looks like. I want to see what those receivers look like. Very intrigued with that one. And then the game tonight, Florida State LSU, I think is a very, very interesting matchup. I mean, what does Florida State have? Can they contend in the ACC? And then what is the Raging Cajun Brian Kelly going to do down there in LSU with his Southern accent? Tell me what you're looking for in those two games, James.
You know, I don't know what to expect from LSU since there was so much transition and they brought so many new guys in. It's hard to see if those guys mesh and, who's going to play quarterback? Is it going to be Jaden Daniels? Is it going to be Garrett Nussmeier? I mean, we know it's not going to be Miles Brennan because he's got to work on his hunting game right now. So, personally, from what I saw last week from Florida State, I would pick the Noles to win tonight. Yeah, I would, because I think there's too much unknown in LSU. I downgraded at the beginning of the year because, I mean, you're bringing in practically a new team. They've had so many guys come together. In 15 fall practices, can you bring those guys together to get ready to play a Power 5 team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still taking the Tigers, and everybody hates Brian Kelly, and I get it. He's apparently a dick, but he's not being paid for his friendship acumen. He's being paid for how he coaches football, and the guy wins games. So I feel like he's going to have this team ready. I mean, let's be honest. Even last year when LSU, just underperformed immensely, they still had talent all over the place. I mean, Keyshawn Butte is one of the best wide receivers in the country, in my opinion. Jaden Daniels, like him or not, has put up numbers at Arizona State. I think he's going to start in the game tonight. And,
I would be surprised if he doesn't, actually.
Yeah, I think he's going to start. And if he doesn't play well, they'll throw the other kid out there. But I think Jaden Daniels will do just enough to win. I mean, let's be honest, Florida State has not been Florida State in the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, it hasn't been the same since Jimbo Fisher left. And it's been kind of a disaster, honestly, with the coaching carousel down there. I think Horvell might be the answer. I don't know. They looked okay in week one, but they were playing Duquesne. I mean, give me a break. All these people are like, oh, they've got a game under their belt. They ran for 400 yards. Well, hell, my high school team could run for 400 yards against Duquesne. So,
yeah, but it's more about execution. Are you not turning the ball over? Are you not getting a lot of penalties. I think people get, when they play against the Sister Marys of the deaf, dumb, and blind, get more worried about the score. I'm looking more at turnovers and penalties, because if you're racking up penalties against them, you're going to rack up more penalties against harder competition. And it's just an execution problem.
I agree. My only point is they're not going to run for 400 yards tonight.
Oh, God, no.
I think LSU's defensive line is going to be a problem for them. And, LSU's always got good cover guys. They always have good linebackers. There's just a big-time talent pool in Louisiana. And, they still have some dudes on that team. And I love Keyshawn Boutte. I think he's a really, really talented receiver. He's the next guy, in my opinion, to come out of LSU and go to the NFL.
Yeah.
He will be the next guy. So hopefully somebody can throw him the ball, because if somebody can get it out there to him, he's going to catch it and he's going to run with it. So we'll see what happens. But I thought it was a great week one, man. I know there's some games we didn't get to, but I thought that it was a very exciting week one of football. Nebraska finally got a win for your boys.
Hey,
way to go.
Hey, taking on the Missouri Valleys of the world. That's great. I wonder how they're going to do next week against South Dakota State or UNI. I mean,
I don't know, man.
Does Scott Frost make it to the middle of October? That's the question.
Well, the question that's going to be answered on, I believe it's September 24th, I think, when they play Oklahoma. So we'll see. They beat North Dakota, and everybody's like, oh, they beat North Dakota. It's not North Dakota State. It's North Dakota. There's a big difference. And they won 38-17, but still not really that impressive. It was 7-7 at halftime, by the way. And then, in the third quarter, I believe it was 24-17. So yeah, they won 38-17, but it was 24-17 in the third quarter, and the game was not, still not in doubt. And I don't know what's going to happen down there, but I kind of feel like it's almost the end of Scott Frost. And another game in the Big Ten was the Indiana-Illinois game. Illinois looked pretty good in week one, got a victory, and then just didn't execute as well in week 0, week one. But Connor Basilick threw for 330 yards. Chase Brown, the running back for Illinois, still ran for 200 in the loss. But that was a big win for Indiana, in my opinion, especially with their schedule coming up. I feel like this was a good one to hopefully improve on that 2-10 season from last year.
Definitely.
So we'll see what happens, man. But enjoy the games tonight and enjoy the game tomorrow. And we'll come back next week and we will break it down all over again. Hopefully have some more guests to come on and chat with us. But we really appreciate former Ohio State quarterback Steve Bellisari joining us today and giving his thoughts. I mean, this is a guy who played quarterback at Ohio State. He played in the NFL. He knows a lot about college football. He knows a lot about what CJ Stroud was facing out there. So it was good to get his thoughts on that game and get his feedback on what happened yesterday.
Perfect. Well, same bat channel next week, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your efforts, and thank you, Lord, for college football. It's great to have it back. We've been talking about it all off season, which it's fun to talk about, what we think's going to happen and who we think's going to be good. But man, it's so much more fun to actually watch it, is it not?
The fans, the environment. If you can't get jacked up by this, there's nothing you can get jacked up by. We finally hit nirvana again.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's there's nothing better than just flipping back and forth through games and taping games and watching a great game. I mean, I sat there and watched the entire East Carolina NC State game, in its entirety from start to finish, and I could have cared less who won, and I still had a fantastic time. So that's what college football is all about. Games like that can keep you interested, even when you don't even care who wins. That's what's great about it to me. So we'll have another great week next week, and we still got some games this week, so we'll get those under their belt and talk to them and break everything down like we do on here. All right.
Perfect.
All right, bud. Have a good one. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for your efforts and keep your chin up.
You bet.
All right, bud. Bye.
Later.